everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lucy, and in today's video I want to recommend to you some royal historical fiction. So it's a gorgeous spring summer day and I'm sitting here with my iced coffee, and is there anything better than talking about historical fiction? I think not. So I love historical fiction. If you didn't know already, I've done several videos about historical fiction on my channel, which I'll leave down below in case you want more recommendations. I can't blame you. But today we are talking about royal historical fiction recommendations in particular. Now this will include any historical fiction book that includes a royal family or a monarchy or anything like that. I also want to flag a lot of these recommendations focus around the British monarchy. That is mainly because I have a particular interest in the British monarchy, in particular the Plantagenet kings and queens. So I am on the lookout for more royal historical fiction, especially from, you know, different countries, different civilizations. Like, hit me up if you do have any recommendations that aren't just Western British kings and queens, because I do really want to read more widely, and I know historical fiction often can be thought of as just being about like white British kings and queens, and even though that's most of the recommendations here today, I really want to kind of broaden my reading and make sure that for a future video, maybe I'll do a second video on this theme, that they are a lot more varied. So I just wanted to say that before we do get started on the recommendations. Another thing I wanted to flag is there probably are some recommendations you may have heard of in this video, but my main focus was to recommend books to you that you may not have heard of, featuring kings and queens that you may not have read about. So let's get cracking on the video. I cannot wait to talk about historical fiction with you all. So the first recommendations I really want to give you are Philippa Gregory's Cousins War series. I talk about this in like every historical fiction video I make. The reason why I love this series so much is because it spans many kings and queens. So this follows really the reigns of Edward IV up until Henry VII or VIII, I think. So obviously a big stretch of history there, and it mainly follows the Plantagenet kings and queens. So this series starts with the White Queen, and this book follows the story of Elizabeth Woodville and her marriage to Edward IV. And obviously Edward IV, he takes over the throne from Henry VI. I really had to think about that there. You also get a companion novel to the White Queen, which is the Red Queen, and that focuses on Margaret Beaufort. So you get to see a lot more points of view, I guess. And what I love about this series so much is the breadth of the royals that you get to see. Like, this is, you know, such a crucial time in British history, so turbulent. And what I love about this series, the Cousins War series by Philippa Gregory, is that every novel swings back and forth in terms of who is in power. In the White Queen in particular, we see the throne pass hands about 3 or 4 times. Like, it is chaotic, but that is why I love this period of history so much, is because, you know, you can't really pick a side, and the reason because of that is, like, the Yorkists may be on the throne one year, the Lancastrians on the throne the other, and often people switched alliances all the time, and you really get to see that in the Cousins War series. So I particularly love this series. I think some highlights for me, like books that I particularly loved, have been The White Queen, which is the first book in the series, and then The Kingmaker's Daughter, which is I can't remember what number in the series that is, but that follows Anne Neville, who is fascinating, obviously married Richard III, and she was the daughter of the Kingmaker, the Earl of Warwick. So I particularly love her story. I think she's fascinating, and not a lot is really known about Anne Neville. So I think this novel does a really good job of maybe like piecing together some of the pieces, and I think it does a beautiful job. Another book that I love in the Cousins War series is The White Princess, which follows Elizabeth of York and her marriage to Henry VII, or Henry Tudor. So this is basically coming to the end of the series, because obviously as soon as the Tudor dynasty comes up, as soon as, you know, Henry VII comes to power, that effectively is the end of like the Plantagenet era, I guess. So I absolutely love these 3 novels in particular. What I should also mention is a companion novel to this series is a book called The Lady of the Rivers, and this actually follows Elizabeth Woodville's mother, and you really get to see more of the kind of dynamic of Henry VI's court, and you know, you get to see his wife as well, so that's really, really fascinating. And this whole series to me is one of the first series that really got me into this genre. I can't stop raving about it enough, and that would be my first recommendation. The next novel is The King's Sister by Anne O'Brien. So The King's Sister takes place a little bit earlier. This takes place in 1382, and it's been a while since I've read this novel, but I absolutely loved it. I found, because I haven't actually read any novels set in the earlier, you know, like 1300s, I found it a really interesting story. So it follows the story of Elizabeth of Lancaster, who is the daughter of John of Gaunt, who John of Gaunt plays a huge part in all the kind of Plantagenet novels, because the connection of birth to John of Gaunt kind of dictates how close to the throne you are. And Elizabeth of Lancaster is actually sister to Henry IV. So Elizabeth of Lancaster obviously is a Plantagenet daughter, and she ends up marrying the brother of Richard II. And if you know about this time, like I mainly know about this time from Shakespeare, so Henry IV Part 1 and 2, Henry IV takes over the throne from Richard II, and there is a huge power struggle there. So Elizabeth of Lancaster is caught in the middle between her brother, Henry IV, who has taken over the throne, but then she is married to Richard II's brother. So there is that kind of power struggle, that family struggle there. I love books like this so much, and I remember this book being a roller coaster ride, because you can see in the background all the political turmoil brewing. You can see the direction that the throne is going to go to, and the kind of royal dynamics here are super, super strong and super interesting. And a lot of these novels I will mention today really focus on the women of history, and I think by using that viewpoint, it makes history even more fascinating, because we don't know a lot about these women, and I think we should. And that's why I love reading the stories about the forgotten women of history. And I think The King's Sister is a great one to read if you're looking for an earlier Plantagenet novel that maybe focuses on more of a power struggle between Richard II and Henry IV. Now the next one is something completely different. This is The Goddess and the Thief by Essie Fox. This is a Victoriana novel set in the reign of Queen Victoria, obviously. This is so rich, so beautiful, so detailed, and very, very different to anything else I've read. So this book follows Alice, who was brought up in India during the Victorian era, and when her family dies, I think out there, she has to live with her aunt in Windsor. So she goes back to England, and her aunt is a medium, which is super, super interesting, because this really explores a lot of the Victorian obsession with the occult, and it's just so rich in those details. It's so brilliant. But she is drawn into a plot to steal the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is a diamond that is a real diamond, and it was taken from India by the British Empire. I mean, are we surprised? I mean, come on. Anyway, but this diamond has a lot of people after it. It has a deposed Maharaja who is looking to get his hands on this diamond, and also the Queen herself, because she has just lost her husband, Prince Albert, and she is looking for a way to commune with him again. So this novel is a lot of fun. It's very, very different. Obviously, the reason I've included it in this video is we get to see Queen Victoria in quite an interesting detail as a widow, as someone grieving the loss of her husband, and the kind of darker kind of side of her reign, I guess. Obviously it explores the British Empire, which, you know, is crazy. Like, reading all of these things in one book set in the Victorian era is super, super special. And of course Queen Victoria plays a big part of this novel, so that's why I wanted to feature it. If you're looking for something that's not very like traditional kings and queens like Philippa Gregory or anything like that, and you wanted a bit of a twist, this will really hit the spot for you. It's dark, it's very atmospheric and very magical, and I would really recommend it. The next book I really want to recommend is Red Rose, White Rose by Joanna Hickson. Now this takes place in the Plantation Era again. Can you tell? It's my favourite era of history. I love reading about it, what can I say? And this follows Cicely Neville, who is definitely a feature character in the Cousins War series by Philippa Gregory as well, but this is her own story, obviously by a different author. Now, Cicely Neville is the mother of Edward IV and Richard III, and she married Richard Plantagenet, who obviously is central in bringing down Henry VI's reign. So he was the one who really rebelled against Henry VI, and it's fascinating, this book, because you really do get to see like Cicely's point of view. And Cicely Neville is like a fascinating character who, if you don't know a lot about her, I would really recommend looking into her. Like I recently listened to a podcast episode of BBC History Extra podcast about her, and it explored the fact that she actually was very, very heavy behind the scenes, like often looking after her husband's land, and was just a big player basically. So I really would recommend this book. The one thing about this book, however, it is split between the stories of Cicely and her half-brother Cuthbert. Because of that, it's quite disjointed, but you do get a really interesting look at the monarchy of that time. As I said, very, very turbulent period, and this kind of kick-started the back and forth between the Yorks and the Lancasters. So I really would recommend this novel if you're looking for, you know, something different. If you have read maybe the Cousins War series by Philippa Gregory and you're just looking for another novel that's kind of set during that time period. I'm having to move slightly because the sun is glaring at me. Anyway, let's crack on. The next book I really want to recommend is Rebel Heiress by Fiona Mountain. Now this book I think I have actually mentioned in a historical fiction video before, but this is fascinating because it's set during the Civil Wars. So, disclaimer, this does not really include that many mentions of a royal family or the monarchy, but it is woven throughout the novel in the form of this is set during the English Civil Wars. I mean, you know, this was a break away from the monarchy. This was when the parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell, really rose to power, and another turbulent time in British history. So I would recommend this book because it follows a woman who is very aristocratic, but she has a fascination with nature and butterflies in particular, and she basically has a very forbidden love story. Now, I absolutely adored this book because it was more focused on a woman who wants to go her own way, and she gets caught in the middle of the Civil War. And I think the whole naturalist element, how she is really leading the way in kind of conservation, butterflies, everything like this. It's really, really cool to read a woman during this time period who is doing her own thing. There is also a love story, as I said, that is super compelling and addictive. If you're looking for something different, like if you've read like the Tudor novels, if you've read Plantagenet novels and you want to explore a different time in British history, then I would recommend Rebel Heiress, or I think it's called like Lady of the Butterflies. I think it was first published as that. But I'd really recommend this because the English Civil Wars is such a great background for a love story and for, you know, a story like this. So I really would recommend this book. And the final book I really want to recommend to you guys is Innocent Traitor by Alison Weir. Now, Alison Weir has obviously, she's one of the most popular historical fiction authors writing about the English monarchy, and I would say that she has done a recent series all about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, so definitely check them out if you're looking for some Henry VIII action. I'm particularly not that fussed about Henry VIII, and I think it's just because like it's talked about so much, everyone knows the stories, everyone has like knows the wives. But the reason why Innocent Traitor by Alison Weir drew me in is because it explores the very short reign of Lady Jane Grey. Now, not a lot of people know about Lady Jane Grey, but she basically came to the throne after Edward VI died, who is Henry VIII's son. I think that's right. Edward VI? Yes. Sorry, all these names, all these dates are confusing me. Anyway, So this explores the life of Lady Jane Grey, who was fascinating and a young girl when she was put on the throne and ultimately beheaded. So you know how the story's going to end, sadly. It's one of the most tragic stories in the monarchy, but I really love the fact that Alison Weir chose to tell her story because it is a fascinating one. So what's really interesting about Lady Jane Grey is that she was only queen for 9 days, and in this novel, it really explores this 15-year-old girl who just wants to live her life and is super intelligent, super brilliant, but her parents and her family are scheming and manipulative and want the throne for themselves, and they see Lady Jane Grey as their only option and route to the throne. It's obviously a very tragic novel because she was only on the throne for 9 days when she was deposed. In particular, I just really loved this novel. I thought it was really well done and explored the life of a girl in history who there's not a lot about, you know, and a lot of these historical royal fiction novels do not explore the life of Lady Jane Grey. So I in particular would recommend this one. Definitely check it out. Alison Weir is a brilliant historical fiction novelist and I love her work. I'm also super excited about Alison Weir's forthcoming novel, which is called Elizabeth of York, The Last White Rose. And I will consume anything about Elizabeth of York forever. I love her story. I find her whole story fascinating, and in particular her relationship with Henry VII. I love anything to do with Elizabeth of York. So the fact that this is coming out very soon, I am hyped about, and maybe I'll do a reading vlog or something like that on that book. That is it for today's recommendations. I really hope you enjoyed this royal historical fiction book recommendations video. Do let me know if you've got any recommendations down in the comments below. I cannot wait to hear your recommendations. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon with my next video. Bye.